With Kirloch and Gormagat, Senator Murphy. Thank you, Minister Richmond, for attending here this morning to the Seanad. And my commencement matter speaks to a very important development not just in my own constituency of Dublin Central, and in the heart of our capital city, but actually the birthplace of our republic. Moore Street is one of the country's oldest trading streets. It's one of the oldest commercial streets where people have traded and families have traded for decades. And it is also a very historic site, not just from a commercial and a trading perspective, but also from a political perspective and from a social perspective. It lies adjacent to O'Connell Street and the GPO, the birthplace of our republic, the rising 1916. We've recently commemorated again. It was from the GPO that the leaders of the 1916 rising evacuated to 14 to 17 Moore Street. The buildings have been protected. They were designated back in 2007 a national monument. And I myself, as a city councillor, have worked over many years with the street traders, with relatives of 1916, with property owners, with the local authority, with the Department of Heritage, and other stakeholders, to try and realise on that site a 1916 commemorative museum. We have had many false dawns, Minister, and I suppose the reason I have resubmitted this commencement matter, I believe this is the fourth time in this term that I have raised this issue in the Seanad, is because there is deep disappointment and frustration with the lack of progress. It was sometime last year when the Minister assured this House that a design team had been appointed and that works would commence, and they were to commence within weeks. And Minister, I appreciate it, you are standing in for the actual Minister today, but we are now not weeks on, but months on, and in fact we're into a whole new year. And Minister, it is so devastating to see the neglect of Moore Street, the neglect of the National Monument. But what's more frustrating and more disappointing is the lack of energy or ambition to actually realise the potential to bring to life that street again, to reanimate it as a trading street, but also to bring to life the historic events of that street, the historic events which led to the birth of our republic. And there is such enormous potential for a 1916 commemorative site, museum on the National Monument site at 14 to 17 Moore Street. It would link directly to the GPO museum. There is a direct historic path coming from the GPO. It was the evacuation route through Henry Place, down Moore Lane and into 14 to 17 Moore Street. Minister, it is my real hope that you have come here to the House today and you will advise the House on a commencement date for works to deliver a 1916 commemorative museum on Moore Street. Gormagat.
Thanks very much, Senator Fitzpatrick, for this very important issue. Minister?
Yeah, Gormagat Cahirlick, and I'm very grateful to the Senator for raising this issue and putting up with me responding, but I do so not just enthusiastically on behalf of my colleague Minister of Donovan, but as someone like yourself who's a true blue dub, who's proud of our nation's history and indeed is a historian by background like Cahirlick, and would have spoken to this issue with him as a Senator. Senator, when this issue was previously raised in the Chamber last November, you will recall that my colleague, then Minister Frank Feehan, had stated at the time that work was proceeding to advance the nomination of a professional design team for the crucial first conservation phase of work, but that given the complexities of the various procurement and legal issues surrounding the appointments of the companies involved, this had been considerably delayed and that he was unable to say with certainty when it might be concluded. The Senator, I know on that day, expressed deep frustration at the delay, and I am aware that she is reflecting the feelings of many stakeholders, both in the area and more broadly across our country, who wish to move this vital project forward. Having consulted again this week with the officials in the OPW, they have assured me that matters have progressed in recent weeks and that they have made significant strides in ironing out many of the issues that have delayed this project to date. The news I have to report to the Senator and the House this afternoon, I think, is much more positive. There has been a significant amount of contact between OPW and the various parties in recent weeks to address relevant contractual matters, and I understand that these are close to being concluded satisfactorily. I expect that once a conclusion has been reached, the appointment of the relevant professional parties can be made. I look forward to having news on this shortly from the Minister and will be delighted to see the team put in place to finally progress this project. The team to be appointed includes the critical individual professional disciplines as follows: conservation architects, M&E service engineers, structural and civil engineers, quantity surveyors, archaeological consultants and fire safety engineers. I understand that we should have news on the appointments very shortly, subject to some final administrative details being addressed. However, it is not envisaged that this will cause any further delay in light of the efforts going on in the background. Senator, there have been good contact and meaningful exchanges between the OPW and the various parties involved to sort out all the very complex and necessary details to bring this matter to a successful conclusion. Colleagues have developed a positive and honest relationship with the proposed team through these contacts. The project team will in response move forward quickly and will, I understand, meet formally upon appointment to immediately begin work. Their first task will be to set out the formal project programme and establish both short and longer term targets for the individual disciplines so that they can immediately thereafter begin substantive work. The immediate target for the project team will be to review the position with regard to the project which was previously underway and which was stopped by order of the court. Given the time that has elapsed, it will be critical to evaluate the design which was previously being implemented, consider whether anything has materially altered in the intervening period, and if necessary, make any changes that are appropriate. There may, for example, be changes that are needed to take account of amendments to the building regulations in the past few years, or there may have been changes to the structure of the houses themselves that need to be looked at. Any material changes will therefore have to be discovered as soon as possible and their implications assessed and planned for. Adherence to the National Monument Ministerial Consent is a critical part of this analysis, since we must ensure at all times that the parameters for the project that were set out in the court process are fully observed and any changes deemed necessary are fully explained and documented. Once this process has been done, this will take about 6 to 8 weeks. The team will immediately then move forward into the detailed design phase, which is necessary to ultimately tendering for the main capital works project, including the appointment of the main contractor to undertake the physical works of the site, and of course that, finally, Senator, will lead to a commencement, the date of which unfortunately I can't share with you this afternoon. If I could, I would, but when we do know that date, it will be passed to you at the earliest possible opportunity.
Thank you very much, Minister. Senator Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, Gur Magath, Ara, and I do appreciate that this isn't your direct portfolio responsibility, so I appreciate you giving of your time, and I acknowledge the importance that you place also on the National Monument and on the historic heritage of our capital city. It is very welcome to hear that a multidisciplinary professional team of architects and conservationists are being appointed. It is really encouraging to hear that work will commence and that their work will be comprehensive and it will be sensitive and it will be ambitious. But I suppose, Minister, it's really hard at this point, so long on, listening to so many promises, to have much confidence that actually there is any firm timeline. In fact, you were not provided with a timeline to come here today, and so that indicates to anybody else listening or taking an interest that there is no confirmed timeline. So, Minister, I would appreciate if you could go back to the Office of Public Works and express to them the deep disappointment of this House, of all of the stakeholders in the National Monument and our wider community, and anybody who has any interest in our heritage, and ask them to bring forward a date for commencements of works as soon as possible. Gur Magath.
Thank you very much, Minister.
Shanador, I'd like to assure you that what I've laid out here this afternoon is a detailed process that has to and will be followed by the government and all the various stakeholders to realise this crucial project. Whilst it doesn't include exact and specific dates, it includes clear objectives that need to be met. That if we were dealing with an ordinary construction project, if we were doing with an ordinary restoration would have a very clear timeline, but I think we should all agree, and it's a good thing, this is an extraordinary process because we are doing it about an extraordinary part of our city and our shared collective history. I do share your frustration. Fundamentally, I think I would love to be in a position to bring my kids into this interpretive centre tomorrow or over the bank holiday weekend. I think we all would, but I know that the project, when completed, will produce something that we can all reflect on, particularly you, Senator. Particularly what you've put in your time on the City Council and in this House, what you've dedicated to this. I know that the finished project will be something that you will take a personal pride in, and I very much look forward to congratulating you when not only is that commencement date fixed, but more importantly that things are actually opened and using, because I think we're moving on in terms of the development of this project with professional appointments that are welcome and will exactly pass it on to where it needs to be. But I fundamentally will commit, of course, to bringing back your frustration, but more importantly, your positive contribution to this debate to the Minister and his officials in Dublin.